Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen, and youth from around the world, hello, and welcome to Shaping Peace Together, a global online conference hosted by United for Human Rights. My name is Alexis Roscoe. I am an actress, an international ambassador for human rights, and your master of ceremonies for this conference. The purpose of United for Human Rights with its youth component, Youth for Human Rights International, is to provide human rights educational resources and activities that inform, assist, and unite individuals, educators, organizations, and governmental bodies in the dissemination and adoption of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights at every level of society. What will it take to create a world without violence and armed conflict?
Es lo que nos va a tomar tener
And
un
is it
mundo
even possible?
completamente en paz.
What will it take to create a world without violence and armed conflict? And is it even possible?
Que faudra-t-il pour
This
créer un
online
monde
global conference,
Tener un
some technical difficulties, bear with us. This online global conference in celebration of International Day of Peace 2020 takes up these questions with presentations by leading humanitarians and
esta
activists
conferencia
from around the world. Our speakers represent very diverse professional, cultural, and geographical backgrounds. We are so grateful to have them to discuss shaping peace from as many angles as possible in this 90-minute online event. At the end of the event, we will have a questions and answers session. So if you have any questions for specific speakers, you can send them to us. If you're on Zoom, click on the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. And if you're on Facebook and YouTube, put your questions in the chat. On that note, we've had over 1,000 people registered to participate from over 100 countries, so we may not be able to answer every question, but this is an interactive conference, and so we would truly love to hear from you. Additionally, you should know that this event is simultaneously translated into Spanish and French. If you feel more comfortable with those languages, you can use the interpretation feature. Just find the globe button in the bottom of the Zoom window and select the language you need. The motto for our Peace Day celebration is learn, inspire, act. As this is exactly what we want you to do. So get comfortable in front of your screen and let's get started. To welcome us from Canada, we have a young songwriter and performer who launched her first album, Le Ciel et la Terre, at just 14 years old. By 18, she entered the world stage and performed with the equestrian circus Cavalia for several years. She has dazzled audiences from the United States to Australia, India to Belgium to Mexico. Please welcome the talented Pamela Boyer.
Each other. I will sing this song in honor of the International Day of Peace. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. For you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Just go on me, brother, hey, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a love you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up that road, and I'll share your love if you just call me, call me, call me when you need a friend. Call me when you need a friend. If you need a friend, any time of day. Yeah, it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on, lean on, lean on me, lean on me, yeah, 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 yeah. You can lean on me. I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Hey, somebody to lean on. No. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. That was incredible, Pamela. Thank you so much. What an incredible way to start off this event. Powerful. Wow. Okay, our first speaker was the president of Costa Rica from 1986 to 1990 and from 2006 to 2010. He received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1987 for his efforts to end the Central American crisis. He used his Nobel Prize money to establish the Arias Foundation for Peace and Human Progress, which promotes peace and equality throughout the world. He just recently celebrated his 80th birthday and still stays an active promoter of peace globally. And now it is my honor to present a video message from our esteemed speaker, Dr. Oscar Arias Sanchez.
My dear friends, there is no better moment to talk about peace. Today, while the entire human race battles against the terrible consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, a disease that has posed serious challenges to our governments, it is wonderful to see a group of people that continues to maintain its foothold for the construction of peace. When I was a child, Costa Rica made a voluntary decision that no other country had ever undertaken, to abolish its army and declare peace to the world. By doing this, my country promised me and all its children that we would never see tanks or troops in our streets. My country promised me and all its children that it would invest not in the weapons of our past, but in the tools of our future. Not in barracks, but in schools, hospitals, and national parks. Not in soldiers, but in teachers, doctors, and park guards. My country promised to dismantle the institutions of violence and invest in the progress that makes violence unnecessary. Quite simply, my country invested in its people. This resulted not only in a healthy, educated, and free society, it resulted in concrete gains for national and regional security. When conflicts and civil wars swept our region in the 1980s, Costa Rica was able to maintain its stability and freedom. What's more, this enabled my little country to become the platform for the peace accords that gradually ended the unrest in our part of the world. I have dedicated part of my life to peace. Through the years, I have had successes and failures. Quite frequently, I struggled with challenges that seemed invincible. But I never gave up. The construction of peace requires continuing tireless efforts. The truth is that peace needs to be constructed every day from our homes, our neighborhoods, our communities, and our countries. No matter what your role in society is, the cause of peace needs every one of us. It summons us all, and it is a call that we must heed if we want to build a better world. In the words of Bertolt Brecht, there are men that fight one day and are good. There are others that fight for a year and are better. Some fight for many years and are very good. But there are those who fight their whole lives. Those are the essentials. So today, I would like to urge you to become one of those essentials for peace. And for that matter, I would like to leave you with an idea that has accompanied me for a long time. An idea that I expressed 33 years ago when I had the honor of receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. Peace is a never-ending process, the work of many decisions by many people in many countries. It is an attitude, a way of life, a way of solving problems and resolving conflicts. It cannot be forced on the smallest nation or enforced by the largest. It cannot ignore our differences or overlook our common interests. It requires us to work and live together. Thank you, and please keep healthy and safe.
Thank you, Dr. Arias. Beautiful. And now I have a participation survey for you participants. You will have about 30 seconds to answer. There will be several options that will appear on your screen. Please tap the one that best fits your idea. How can we achieve long-term peace? 1, by negotiating peace agreements with political leaders. 2, by teaching children their human rights and responsibilities. 3, by implementing social campaigns to reduce violence in high-crime communities. 4, by using military to address violence. 5, other. And once you're done, I'll give you the results of what everybody feels. Okay, 8% of people feel that by negotiating peace agreements with political leaders, we will achieve long-term peace. 74% of you feel that it's by teaching children their human rights and responsibilities. 15% say by implementing social campaigns to reduce violence in high crime communities. 1% says by using military to address violence, and 3% is other. Thank you so much. All right. Our next speaker is head of the African Government's Architecture Secretariat at the African Union. He is responsible for the promotion and protection of human rights, good governance, and the rule of law in 55 member states of the African Union. He is also a senior human rights expert at the Department of Political Affairs in the African Union Commission. I am honored to introduce His Excellency Salah Hamad.
Madam Chair, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol duly observed. I wish to begin by wishing you all a happy International Peace Day, and also by thanking United for Human Rights and Youth for Human Rights International for bringing us together today from all corners of the globe to celebrate this important occasion, the International Peace Day, under the theme, Shaping Peace Together. I'm also quite honored and delighted to be part of this distinguished panel, which includes His Excellency Dr. Oscar Arias Chances, former President of Costa Rica and Nobel Peace Prize winner. As may all of you are aware, the African heads of state and government declared 2020 as the Year of Peace in Africa under the theme, Silencing the Guns, Creating Conducive Conditions for Africa's Development. Therefore, this event is timely because silencing the guns in Africa is a huge collective responsibility, and all hands must be joined together in order for this noble goal to be accomplished. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, here the legitimate question that I have in mind: what is the role that could be played by youth to create a peaceful world, and in particular a peaceful continent, a peaceful Africa? The recent youth uprising in many parts of Africa shows that youth understand the role that they have to play as positive agents of change. Generally, young people are placed at the core of development because they represent a generation of fresh ideas, fresh leaders, and good strategists in the fight against ills of bad governance in Africa and elsewhere. Africa, as a young continent, has embarked on various initiatives to operationalize the demographic dividend paradigm for accelerating socioeconomic development on the continent. As such, the Continent Agenda 2063 endorsed the demographic dividend as a key framework for developing the continent and for sustaining peace and security. Agenda 2063 seeks to transform Africa into an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful continent driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. The same agenda, ladies and gentlemen, recognizes the role of the African peoples, dynamics in the transformation, and specifically seeks to unleash the full potential of youth and women to help boost socioeconomic development in all parts of Africa. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it's about time that the young people move from being agent of violence to joining the structure of leadership positions in politics and also governance affairs. Usually when people talk about conflict situations, the immediate focus will be on young people as violent by nature rather than a product of surrounding circumstances. Much attention has been also paid to youth as agent of conflicts rather than peace, enhancing structures for and developing platforms that promotes the participation of youth in peace building processes will actively contribute to building peace and security. Considering that 65% of the population on the African continent are youth, it is becoming increasingly important that rather than seeing young people as agents of conflict and destruction, they are seen as agents of peace and advocates for social cohesion in their communities. The inclusion of young people in peace-building processes is bound to facilitate sustainable peace in our societies by redirecting the energies of young people to the implementation of constructive projects and facilitate the transformation to agent of peace and reconciliation. It must be noted that a conflict situation or violent conflict cannot be brought to rest, managed, or transformed without adequately creating programs and initiatives in peace education and diversity management. The availability of adequate education infrastructure, employment opportunities would go a long way to redirect youth energy. This would, of course, enable the creation of sustainable peace and security in our societies. In conclusion, youth must be recognized as leaders of today and leaders of tomorrow, and should be given the opportunity to participate in all governance issues, as well as participating in peace-building processes in order to create a peaceful Africa and a peaceful world. Once again, happy International Peace Day. Let us learn, inspire, and act. I thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Ambassador Hamad. That was incredible. All right, we have a second participation survey of the conference for you. What should political leaders do to allow youth's contribution to shaping peace? Very much on the point of what you were saying, His Excellency. Here are the options. Number 1, to take youth's participation and views into account in decision-making processes. 2, invest in youth in on-the-job training, employment opportunities, incentives to work for NGOs, etc. 3, support social and humanitarian projects originated by youth. Or 4, educate youth about human rights and peace principles. And now for the results. Oh, fascinating. 25% of you said to take youth's participation and views into account in decision-making processes. 16% said invest in youth affected by armed conflict through employment opportunities. Sorry, excuse me. Yes, that's right. Invest in youth affected by armed conflict through employment opportunities, education, etc. 17% of you said support social and humanitarian projects originated by youth. And 41% said educate youth about human rights and peace principles. All right, fantastic. And now we are honored to welcome a diplomat who has worked for over 20 years at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland, mainly in the area of multilateral diplomacy in Brussels, Paris, and Geneva. During her career, she has specialized in the European Union and developed policy and lately in the United Nations, as she is leading the UN team in her mission. Please welcome Deputy Permanent Representative of Finland to the United Nations in Geneva, Minister Sari Lätiranta.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, I'm honored to be able to participate in this conference today and share my thoughts with you on how we can create, and I would stress, maintain peace. Let me start by citing my countryman and far more experienced diplomat, former President of Finland, who received the 2008 Nobel Peace Prize, Mr. Martti Ahtisaari. In his Nobel lecture, he said, "The only people that can make peace are the parties to the conflict. And just as they are responsible for the conflict and its consequences, so should they be given responsibility and recognition for the peace." President Ahtisaari stressed that building peace must involve everybody, the weak and the powerful, the victors and the vanquished, men and women, young and old, in short, you and me. I'm lucky that I have been able to live in a peaceful society for all my life, in a country where Nordic welfare state prevails and all people are equal and free. However, only a little more than a century ago, after gaining independence in 1917, my country Finland suffered a short but brutal civil war in 1918. Villages and towns, even families, were divided in two, whites and reds, politically conservative, opposing the socialist workers and tenant farmers. Out of some 36,600 deaths, red casualties outnumbered white by around 6-1. The conflict left deep scars, and it could have divided the young nation for decades to come. But through a culture working together, former enemies were able to reconcile and build peace together. Finland's first president, K.J. Ståhlberg, pardoned the red prisoners, allowed trade unions to negotiate, and signed a law so tenant farmers could purchase their holdings at advantageous prices. With mutual trust and confidence building, we were able to secure a strong democracy, parliamentary system, and the universal welfare state. I was asked how countries and civil society can work together on creating peace, how each and every one of us can help shape peace in our own communities. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights gives us important elements that are needed for building and maintaining lasting peace. It states that all human beings should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood, and I should add sisterhood, that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. In Finland, this means that we have, for example, a well-functioning democracy, free elections, free press, a low corruption index, and inclusive social security services, helping those who need assistance. Every child has the right to daycare and free quality education. Public health covers all citizens. These important values for Finns These are important values for Finns, as shows the #1 position of Finland in World Happiness Report in 2020, measuring how satisfied people are with their lives. The big question is how much we can influence what takes place in the world and around us. How can we achieve SDG 16, that everyone would be living in just, peaceful, and inclusive societies? We need the world that respects and acknowledges the significance of human rights. We need the world that maintains the capability of international organizations to resolve global problems and helps to prevent the outbreak of military conflicts. Foreign policy and diplomacy do play their part in this. In Europe, we have been able to secure the peace through the European Union. The European Union and its forerunners have contributed to the advancements of peace and reconciliation, democracy, and human rights. Personally, I have witnessed, while working in Brussels, how European nations are able to make decisions together despite differing views, sometimes after long and difficult negotiations. through multilateral negotiation and cooperation, diplomacy, when the international community joins forces and works together for a common aim, we can achieve the SDG 16 globally. Finally, I asked my friends how we can help shape peace and what we can do in our daily life. And there was one answer that was above the others. And I have to say that with your first survey today, so it doesn't surprise me that their answer was also that pay attention to children and youth. How we educate our children, what do we teach them about the others, cultures, history, different minorities, be they linguistic, sexual, persons with disabilities or others? Do they learn to be critical readers and media consumers? Can they separate fake news from the real ones, science from the pseudosciences? Are they able to listen to each other, appreciate the differences, and admit when they are wrong without anger or fear? By teaching our children to be responsible and critical citizens, we'll have future adults that can recognize prejudices, superstitions, and false information that are often behind the conflicts. I would like to end with the words of Finland's current president, Mr. Sauli Niinistö, who said that the one lesson that came out of our civil war is that there is diversity, people have different backgrounds, convictions, and goals, and we have a right to disagree. This is something we must be able to respect, however differently we ourselves might think. So in conclusion, respect for each other, acting towards one another in a spirit of brother and sisterhood, that's all we need. And I guess as Pamela sang in the beginning, we all need somebody to lean on. So I would like to thank you and wish you all the happy International Peace Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Lehtiranta. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, and now for the third and final participation survey. When you envision a peaceful world, what do you see? Number 1, a place where there is no fighting or war. 2, a place where all people enjoy their rights and freedoms. 3, a place where all live free from discrimination such as race, ethnicity, religion, etc. Or 4, a place where people get social benefits from their government. Let's see what you said. Just waiting for the results. Here we go. Okay, 1% said a place where people get social benefits from their government. 7% said a place where there's no fighting or war. 39% said a place where all live free from persecution due to one's race, ethnicity, religion, etc. And 52% said a place where all people enjoy their rights and freedoms. Thank you so much. All right. The next speaker is the granddaughter of Nobel Peace Prize laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the founder of Brave Hearts Multimedia. She is a writer, producer, and humanitarian. She has developed content for various TV and radio shows, as well as human rights awareness campaigns for NGOs and community outreach activities. Please welcome Joy Ngoma.
Thank you, Alex, for the lovely introduction. And what a beautiful performance we had to open this conference with such a powerful message, Lean on Me, as we are being called this year more than ever to lean on each other in order to tackle all of the issues that is affecting all of our global communities around the world. I would also, before I start, would like to acknowledge all of the panelists, my fellow panelists that I'm taking part of this conference with today. When I got the invitation to be part of this conference today, I was ecstatic. And because peace is such a very close subject to me, it almost feels like home and it comes so natural. But surprisingly, as I was preparing what am I going to say and how am I allowing myself to be part of this movement fully, I started having this intense feeling of fear and I was panicking. And it surprised me because how can something that sounds so familiar and feels like home could put me in this state of fear and panic? And then I realized that this year, our peace, what we view as peace, for our security and our safety, that carpet has been ripped right under our feet. We are all panicking. We are all in this state of fear because in March, our world was invaded by this monstrous disease or virus called COVID-19, where we were also busy in our own little corners, in our own different world and planning ahead on what we are going to do for 2020. And all of a sudden, it's like the world had to come to a standstill. We had to stop. Out of that, what I have realized is that it taught us as humans that we need to lean on each other. We need to take care of each other. That kindness always casts a bright light on humanity. And when we lose kindness, when the absence of kindness creates a dark cloud around humanity, and we have seen that cloud, and quickly we realize that we cannot allow that cloud to overshadow and take away our peace. Then we started to act. When in the US, the cases against police brutality started piling up, young people in the US realized that we cannot stand by if we want to see peace. If we want to, we have to act. They organized protests around the country to protest against, to fight against this injustice. And the rest of the world took notice. And the rest of the world decided we will also not be able to stand by and watch while our brothers and sisters are suffering. We're also gonna join that movement. We're gonna be part of that change. We're gonna be part of the movement that's gonna bring peace into the US. But not only that, it forced us, this year more than any other year, has forced us to step back and say to ourselves, humanity means that being a humanitarian, it means that the cloth or this narrative that it's them against us needs to stop. That if you see injustice happening in Ethiopia, it is your call to take action, to say no, it should not be happening. If you see injustice happening in Bulgaria or in Romania or in America or in Georgia or anywhere in the world, it is your responsibility to say, no, I will not allow that to happen. Because when we realize that the cloud that is trying to disturb our peace is covering that bright light of kindness, then it's hard to go back to that state. It's hard for us to stand on our own 2 feet and see peace so near to us. One of the things that this year has also taught us is that we have this massive responsibility of taking care of each other. We need to take care of each other. The health workers have taken this fight on this war at the forefront. They are fighting with kindness. They are fighting with compassion. They are fighting with love. That is the message that we are receiving this year, that we need to be kind to each other. And what comes to mind is a quote by one of my favorite people that says, do your little bit of good where you are. Those little bit of good together, put together, will overwhelm the world. We have seen that firsthand. Those words, more than anything else this year, they ring a loud bell to say that every little bit that you do, it makes a difference. We have seen it with our health workers. We have seen it with our service workers that are sacrificing their own lives for the better good of the collective. So before I go, because I am running out of time, I would also love to leave you with a quote by the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that says, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. That is why we are here today celebrating International Day of Peace, because we are all doing our little bit of good to the world. Thank you.
Lovely, Joy, and thank you so very much. Completely true. We all do our part. And now we have the Senior Director for Partnerships and Special Initiatives of the United Nations Foundation and United Nations Association of the United States of America. He gives hands-on solutions backed by years of experience, letting everyone know what they can do right now in terms of shaping global peace. Please welcome Mr. Troy Wolf.
Thank you, Alexis, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm very honored to take part in this International Day of Peace and the Global Online Conference. And thank you for bringing us all together for this special virtual experience. I'm here at a time when we're honoring the UN's 75th anniversary. Of course, this is not how we anticipated the world would be celebrating such a milestone, but I'm inspired by the way advocates such as yourselves have adapted under the limitations of this new normal, finding new ways to connect with one another, to educate, inspire, and mobilize your community to support peace and the work of the United Nations. 2020 has brought unprecedented challenges for us that are currently impacting every person in the world. We're experiencing a shared urgency, not only to overcome a devastating global pandemic, but to rebuild a stronger foundation for global progress. It's only fitting that we look back at the UN's origin story and celebrate its fundamental purpose today. The UN represents humanity's highest ideals and most ambitious goals, and yet it was born from our darkest days. 75 years ago, our world was devastated in the aftermath after World War II. Half the population lived on less than $1 a day. Human life expectancy was 45 years. Pain and trauma hung like a thick fog, a constant reminder that so many lives were lost. Survival meant doing everything in our collective power to ensure humanity would never face this hardship again. From shared experience and suffering, we created a system which would defend us from our own worst possible actions, a system to equip future generations with global teamwork as a first line of defense. 75 years ago, delegates from 50 countries came together to showcase a commitment to international cooperation and shared action for peace. Leading up to this moment, 42 organizations, including the American Association for the United Nations, now UNAUSA, had advocated for the UN's formation through partnerships and persistent lobbying. This rich history with the United Nations is one of the many reasons we protect it, we defend it, support it, and advocate for it today. Former First Lady, UNAUSA Chairwoman, and human rights trailblazer Eleanor Roosevelt said, "The world of the future is in our making. Tomorrow is now." The UNA community has always directed its mission by reconciling with the past, meeting the present moment with commitment to steer towards hope rather than fear, and creating progress by first deciding what progress looks like. Indeed, tomorrow is now. So here we are, and thanks to the UN's work, we've had some big wins for the world. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights has guided 193 countries. Nearly half the world's children have received life-saving vaccines. Smallpox has been eradicated, and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are a guiding force for member states. These are just a few of the UN's global achievements, but to count the everyday impact the UN has had on human lives would be impossible. When you examine how much the UN has done for the world in under a century, hope is tangible and real, particularly when you consider that the UN is made up of folks like you and me. But right now in 2020, we find ourselves against a similar backdrop as the one in 1945, when finding hope after World War II seemed impossible. Right now, major challenges of unprecedented scale are clouding our forward vision. As we heard before, the COVID-19 pandemic has stopped the world in our tracks. It's changing our lives overnight. The virus has taken more than 864,000 lives and is climbing. It's devastated the global and national economies, exacerbated existing racial and gender inequalities, and taken a record number of children out of school and slipped families back into poverty. It's become very clear that COVID-19 is not only a global health crisis, it's a social crisis, it's an economic crisis, it's a crisis of human rights. And of course, COVID-19 is not the only danger to our global community. Police brutality, discriminatory violence, systemic racism against people of color, particularly Black Americans, are impossible to ignore. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Jacob Blake, Daniel Prude, just a few names in the endless list of lives stolen or harmed forever at the hands of police officers. In the face of all these major challenges and more, we still have hope. Although it's easy to feel discouraged by the magnitude of the global challenges we face, there's a silver lining. The United Nations was built for moments just like this. As UNA USA advocates know well, even a system built with the best of intentions needs persistent voices behind it. Whether donating masks to healthcare workers, raising money for local food banks, hosting community discussions to empower women and girls, petitioning local governments to help combat climate change, engaging in peaceful protests against police violence, volunteering to help survivors of human trafficking, forming partnerships with businesses that affect changes in policy, or anything else in the long list of actions for global peace and progress, everyday folks like us are bringing our world one step closer to achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals and ensuring a bright, prosperous future for all. We see more engagement from civil society, from companies, from organizations, from governments, taking action to combat climate change. We see young people leading the conversation as they activate for progress, demanding peaceful resolution to age-old problems. And although there's no way to paint a positive picture for millions of people whose income or education has been affected in the current state of the world, we can all continue to advocate for a more inclusive, sustainable, and peaceful world for everyone, everywhere. We press for change now so that future generations have a foundation to build on. When we eventually recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, the world won't look the same as it did before, and that's a wonderful thing. It's our task now to make sure that it looks better. As we near the end of 2020, we pledge to embark on a decade of action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals in time for the 2030 deadline. We all have a stake in our future, so I implore you to connect with your goal and the goal that you're passionate about, and to continue building on the momentum till 2030. Reflect on what you can do more, or continue to do, or be a champion for the Sustainable Development Goals in your community. Lean into this network of people who support the United Nations to provide support to you. Because continuing the dialogue, onboarding others from your community to a new vision, making real change, and demonstrating courageous leadership in the face of real challenges is key to our collective success. We, the people of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. These words open the UN Charter. We encourage you to learn more about the United Nations associations all over the world, to join our network and to support the never-ending pursuit for peace, justice, and a better world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wolf. Everyday folks like us. That's indeed the case, indeed. Thank you so much. As you remember, the motto of our online conference is learn, inspire, act. And action is an intrinsic part of making human rights a fact. Article 29 of the Universal Declaration is probably the best expression of that. Here is a short video explaining it.
Good morning. I'm here to read you your rights.
My what?
We are all free and equal. Don't discriminate. You have the right to life.
You have the right to life and to live in freedom and safety.
You have a right to education. You have a right to your own things.
You have the right to social security. You have the right to play.
You have the right to democracy. You have the right to asylum.
You have the right to take responsibility.
And no one
and nobody can take these rights and freedoms away from you.
Why are you doing this?
You have a right to know.
Yes, it was by filming this very PSA that I got introduced to the Youth for Human Rights International campaign, and it has now been over a decade of inspirational adventures ever since. The next speaker was born and raised in apartheid South Africa and has always strived to empower others through education. She is the founder and president of United for Human Rights and Youth for Human Rights International, and has personally circled the globe 17 times, visiting more than 90 countries with the purpose of bringing human rights education to millions. Last year, she was honored with the Medal of Recognition for Social Activism during the World Peace Summit for Nobel Peace Laureates. It is with great pleasure I introduce to you Dr. Mary Shelworth.
Thank you. How wonderful to be sharing International Day of Peace with such a peace-loving congregation. Our international panelists contributed years of insights and expertise. Dr. Oscar Arias, thank you for enriching us with your wisdom from decades of tireless dedication to building peace, and of course the outstanding contributions of the president of the Arias Foundation for Peace and Human Progress, Suzanne Fischel. Yes, we will strive to live and work together. Ambassador Hamad, the African Union campaign on silencing the guns is an important lesson for us all. Ms. Joy Ngoma, your valuable experiences following the legacy of your esteemed grandfather are inspiring. Minister Letiranta, we appreciate your sharing such insightful knowledge on how Finland is implementing peace building. Mr. Troy Wolf, your hands-on practical activities that anyone can do to help shape global peace contributes a great deal. Thank you for those powerful interventions. These are challenging times. Here we are in our makeshift home studios. We are all affected by the double-edged sword of the COVID-19 pandemic, either by the deadly virus itself or the problematic states of emergency measures, stresses and challenges with increased depression, suicides, violence, and a rise in the multi-billion-dollar illegal inhuman trafficking worldwide. Unfortunately, this is not our only challenge. Last year alone, more than 10,000 lives were lost during devastating armed conflicts. War threatens and thousands of active nuclear warheads lie silently, but in high alert, ready for kilotons of destruction. These threats and too many uncertainties are all too real. Today, this discourse on shaping peace together is vital. World peace seems elusive in this imperfect world of more than 7 billion imperfect people. Unfortunately, there is no single-dose peace pill. I'm a teacher. Education, education, education. If we want peace, we must teach peace. Learning to read is not optional. Learning basic math is not optional. Learning human rights and responsibilities are not optional. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights is relevant as it was in 1948. Today, 193 countries are members of the United Nations. That's almost all the countries in the world. Peace is not a single finite object. Peace is about actions, sometimes tiny actions, a smile, a kind word, a kind deed. Like human rights, peace must be relevant, must inspire to help build the world we want for ourselves, families, communities, and the world. Peace is built one step at a time. Peace in the eyes of that young child who was trying to hide her bruises. I met her after she narrowly escaped from vicious sex traffickers. Peace in the eyes of the much too skinny young child staring into that little bowl of food. She had been standing with some 200 other children, patiently holding their small empty containers, hoping for just one hot meal. Peace in the eyes of that victim of abuse who learned about human rights and then decided to report the abuser rather than take his own life. Peace in the eyes of the young man eager to learn how to read, because as he told me, when we were enslaved child soldiers, we went to schools, but not to learn. We went with orders to burn them down. Peace is extending hands across perceived differences around the world. Let's face it, we're all different. No two fingerprints are alike. Peace is celebrating our vibrant uniqueness. Peace is inscribed in signed treaties. Peace is embodied in those nuclear warheads now disarmed. Never take peace for granted. Always, always acknowledge those seemingly small accomplishments along the way. Those small victories empower us with the strength to continue our courageous journeys, learning from each other and shaping peace together. Let's learn, inspire, act, and build our culture of peace. Next, as our final speaker, I would like to introduce the Executive Director of United for Human Rights. In 2009, I met him in Russia, where I saw him in action as a team leader in St. Petersburg. Through his dedication, tenacity, and diligence, he later joined our international team. Since 2014, he's been leading operations, including a network of over 150 chapters, facilitating human rights education through nearly 50,000 schools across the world, and helps bring the message of peace and human rights in 27 languages to more than 190 nations. Please welcome my friend and colleague, Mr. Ruslan Husainov. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. If there is any lag, I might turn off my video, but I hope we won't have any glitches on the video side as well. With that, we come to the next chapter of this virtual event, when I invite you to consider the core purpose of our organization and how it is tied to the International Day of Peace itself. When Youth for Human Rights and United for Human Rights were established almost 20 years ago, it was half a century.
One moment, Ruslan. One moment, Mr. Husainov. Mr. Husainov? Yeah, we can't hear you so well, so it seems like it's cut out a little bit.
Okay, let me try to turn on. Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yes, that's much better.
Wonderful. Well, when Youth for Human Rights and United for Human Rights were established almost 20 years ago, it was half a century after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted. Wars and conflict were still the order of the day, while terrorism reached its peak. So one fact was very clear. Although there were many people relentlessly fighting for human rights and freedoms, there was one key element missing. This element was solid knowledge and understanding of the basic human rights. People simply didn't know their rights. It's quite hard to defend people's rights if they don't know what they are. So it was understood for us that by resolving this missing part, we can make our progress sustainable and lay the foundation for a true culture of peace. And since that moment, everything that we had done was focused only on one thing: bring about broad-scale awareness of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and making its postulates alive in the minds and hearts and souls of all the people of Earth. Our campaign commences at the grassroots level with petition drives and distribution of informational booklets to relay this basic knowledge. Then, to further expand human rights activities and awareness, United for Human Rights produced public service announcements illustrating all of the 30 articles of the Declaration. They are so catchy that they quickly became popular. They now have played at any conceivable public venues such as international airports, soccer conventions, shopping malls, cinemas, train stations, metros, buses, you name it. Not to mention over 1,300 TV stations all over the world. Then there is the Story of Human Rights documentary that became the centerpiece of our educational curricula. We have developed 2 full kits for educators, one for middle and high school age and another for late high school and university level. Both include a curriculum with detailed lesson plans, enough booklets for an entire classroom, posters, and a DVD with both the public service announcements and the documentary. Some people call it a classroom in a box. In the last 12 months, we received over 31,000 orders for these educational materials from 175 nations. As a result, over 50,000 schools across the planet adopted our educational materials to date. And then we ensure voices of youth are heard. Case in point, our annual International Human Rights Summit, held at the United Nations in Geneva and New York, where young delegates from dozens of nations joined international human rights icons, speak out for human rights, and encourage officials to join in. Then there are our websites, youthforhumanrights.org and humanrights.com. Our websites are interactive, educational. They include complete information on our programs, including videos and downloadable materials. And website visits reached 5 million last year. So this is how we were able to, reach out to as many people as possible. And thanks God, we had also created our basic human rights online course, which allowed us to continue educating thousands despite the health situation that emerged this year. When the current pandemic hit, we all witnessed the devastating repercussions on some basic human rights. It was vital that we continue spreading the message of human rights regardless of the physical barriers. United for Human Rights online course is basically all of our visual materials put into the simplest training program, which educates one about the history of human rights and all of the 30 articles of the Universal Declaration in some 3 to 6 hours. We realized that it needs to be available to as many people as possible, so we currently translated it into 17 languages. To make it truly the tool anybody can use, it is free of charge and available 24/7 anywhere in the world. So I encourage you, if you haven't done it already, to take this course today and then share the word with others. Let people learn the same knowledge that you now have access to. You might even want to get entire schools or colleges signed up, for instance, like the news I received from our Miami chapter. Just in 1 week, they signed up and educated 500 school students online. The feedback so far is tremendous. So let's give this world a chance to continue coming out of the confusion with the reliable information, which will give them confidence to act and make the world a little bit a better place. Give them confidence. As Dr. Arias stated earlier during the conference, peace requires continued tireless efforts, and peace needs to be constructed every day from our homes and our communities and our countries. Whatever the role in society you hold, the cost of peace needs every one of us. Thank you very much.
And thank you both so much, Dr. Shuttleworth and excuse me, Mr. Husainov. Absolutely inspiring speeches, both. All right, well, this brings us to the question and answer section of the conference, and I have had questions pouring in. So let's get right to it. With over 1,000 participants today from all over the world, here we go. The first question is for Ambassador Hamad. How can the world attain peace when the strong Western and Asian economy are in Africa when the strong Western and Asian economy are in Africa, distrusting the peace and extorting the African wealth and distributing weapons in Africa? That's for you, Ambassador Hamad.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Africa has realized the need to develop itself as a continent and to stand strong to support the livelihood and the well-being of its citizens. The presence of the strong Western and Asian economies in Africa has its positive and negative elements, but we look at it also from a positive point of view that they are in Africa to invest and to avail opportunities of employment for our African youth. That is why Africa and the African Union came with Agenda 2063, a blueprint for developing Africa, the Africa we want and the Africa we deserve. So in brief, we need to empower our youth to lead so they can be part of this development process, so then they can prevent those who are in Africa to harm our economies, and they can support those who are in Africa to assist Africa to progress, to unite, and to be a peaceful continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And this for Minister Letiranta. How can we achieve peace all around the globe with different diplomats, different local authorities in different countries? Tarak Soni, Gujarat, India.
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for all the presentations as well. I think the question is very difficult, but then we are all humans. So I think that is one of the thing, as I said in my presentation as well, that the respect for each other, one another. So that is the key. All the diplomats coming from different countries. In Geneva, we are quite many. And a friend of mine told me that always the best or the good solution to build the peace is to sit together for a lunch or for the dinner. So I think it's having the contacts with our counterparts wherever we are, inviting each other, be it for a cup of coffee or tea or something else, and talking with each other. So that is one of the ways that we can enhance the peace in the world and also enhance the understanding. I think that is the most important thing, that we understand, we listen each other's, and that way we can build the peace together. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is for either Ambassador Hamad or Joy Ngoma. What does human rights education have to do with making a more peaceful Africa?
I'm sure Joy would like to take this question.
I was just unmuting. Human rights education is very important because before you could do anything, you have to learn first. So if we are teaching, people are aware of their rights and what they are capable of and what actions they need to take, people are much more inclined to understand their environment and the society that they live in, especially in Africa, where we have so much injustice going on, especially at the moment in South Africa in terms of gender-based violence and human trafficking. But most people are not even aware of what steps needs to be taken in order for them to protect themselves and the people that are around them. So if we learn about our rights and what we are capable, what we can demand from our leaders, then we are able to handle these issues we are given like a better platform to handle or attack these issues in a proper manner.
Lovely. Ambassador Hamad, would you like to add anything?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. I would like to say that if we teach hate, we will get hate as fruits. If we teach peace, certainly that's what we're going to get. So to manage the diversity we live in, to make the world a better place for all of us, we need to really focus on education. As Madame Mary mentioned, Dr. Mary, that education is the way. Especially when it comes to knowing rights and duties and responsibilities. And especially when that education will make us ready to accept the differences that we have, the diversity that we enjoy, and make us believe in tolerating each other in this life. And therefore, we will make the world a better place for all of us to live.
Excellent. Okay, the next question is for Mr. Husainov. How can I get more involved in Youth for Human Rights? How do I create my own chapter?
Thank you very much for the question. Very good question. If again there is any lag, please let me know. But,
yeah, we can't hear you, so it's probably best to turn off the video, sadly.
That's fine.
Yeah, try turning off your video again, because that did seem to work.
Okay, so it's a very good question, and thank you very much. So the way to open any chapter or get involved is very simple. You can either just reach out on our website and ask, can I join a group? It's literally right on the front on our website. Or you can send us an email, which is very simple, activities@humanrights.com. And we'll hook you up immediately either with our local representative if we have chapters, or we can also send you instructions on how to take action and how can you do something about creating peace in your local community. I hope this answers the question.
Activities@humanrights.com?
Correct.
Great. All right, that's the email address. Here we go, good. So the next one, thank you very much, Mr. Husainov. The next one is for Dr. Shuttleworth. How do you hope to impact this world with the work you are doing with Youth for Human Rights?
Well, of course, that's my favorite question, because that's exactly what we're doing and exactly what we want to do. And as a teacher, it's education, education, education. But more than education, if we truly want to impact the world, we have to inspire. Anybody who's inspired by a message, inspired by a solution, will automatically share that inspiration, share that message. We are all basically amazing people. Believe me, I've traveled 93 countries. And the majority of people are just wonderful people who just really want solutions, really want to, improve things for themselves, their families, their children, and grandchildren like me. So it's really educate, use our materials, but make sure that when you educate, you take it a step forward. Make sure that you inspire. Make sure that that person knows that those human rights are their human rights, the human rights universally for each one of us. Really embrace it, understand it, that we have so many wonderful cultures and peoples. Believe me, I met them and I've eaten their food. Some of it's not so good, but so many wonderful people. each needs to embrace those basic human rights in the way that they relate to it from the perspective of their local laws, their local constitutions, their local cultures, and just the bottom line is educate and inspire. Thank you.
Fantastic, beautiful. The next question can be for any of the speakers. What role can youth play in brokering peace among tribes that have been without peace for decades?
I suggest that we give that one to Troy.
Okay.
I'm wrapping my brain around the word tribes. Would you read, Alexis, can you read the question again?
For sure. What role can youth play in brokering peace among tribes that have been without peace for decades?
Yeah. So I would say in my work, so I spoke earlier about the United Nations Association. We're a grassroots network of people who support the UN. Intergenerational group, we've got members as young as middle school age, which might be 12 years old, to members in their upper 90s. And I would say to be an agent of change, I would say to be the change that you want to see. I think change begins with one person having the courage to step out, to extend an olive branch across the aisles, to de-escalate conflict, which sometimes is a challenge, and to try to talk through issues so that you can find a common ground. That would be my suggestion.
Lovely. And I see, Joy, that you also want to, oh, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
I just want to say one other thing too. When we speak about education, because I too have a background in education, and I think we traditionally approach that word through the lens of working with children. I think in our work in saving the world and saving the planet, it's important to seize the moment to educate everyone at every interval. And sometimes that might mean that a young person, a little person, might have to educate an adult on some of these global issues to come at it from a different perspective. Back over to you.
Lovely. Thank you. I agree. And Joy, you wanted to communicate to this a bit?
No, I was gonna add to what Troy was saying in terms of the youth. I think we have learned or are experiencing it right now that the youth, they are always capable of reshaping what activism looks like and what humanity looks like. So if we are speaking in terms of tribes, and especially those who are like in the outskirts of the world where people have forgotten about them, who don't seem to have a voice, the youth is very good at coming up with brilliant ideas on how to unite everyone for the same cause. We have seen that. So in terms of moving forward, and I think sometimes we also rely too much on the youth, but I think it's because they are the driving force for peace, because they have a better vision of what they want the world to look like. We are messing it up or like around, and in terms of climate change, and we expect the youth to have all of the answers, but I think we somehow need the older generation. There is a gap between the older generation and the youth, and we need to bridge that gap, and that's how we will be able to assist the tribes, which I don't know what they mean by tribes, but I get it. So I think that's how we can help.
Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, this is so exciting. More questions are just pouring in. Okay, this one is for Mr. Husainov. What do you think about all the riots in Colombia? How can human rights help bring peace?
Thank you, Alexis, and thank you for the question. Well, the true experience that we already had in Colombia had shown us and taught us a lesson how to deal with that. In 2009, when we launched a program in Colombia, we had partnered with many different parts of the government and the civil society, which included training armed police forces, training police, military. In fact, we trained over 300,000 law enforcement and military personnel on human rights. And whereas the country before was torn by internal military conflicts, had risen to the level when it was able to actually sustain peace. And as you know, the result, there was a peace treaty achieved. So when we have...
Can I just, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but your audio broke up right after you said you trained 300,000 military.
Understood.
Go ahead.
Yes. So this lesson taught us that we can actually, put all the forces together for human rights education and give the stable information on what human rights are so they can be applied and implemented. So this resulted in, just consider the statistics, 96% drop of all the violations by military against civilians. Just pure education. That is the power of education when we talk about a campaign of just 5 years. So to answer this question, the answer is, again, it's education and awareness. We can definitely tackle, acute moments like this, but the true solution is education on human rights.
Incredible. Okay, let's see. Good. So for Dr. Shuttleworth, how can we protect peace when the whole world is not united together? How do we help unite people together?
That's such a good question. The point is that, number one, the world is an imperfect place with more than 7 billion imperfect people. We cannot solve this issue of peace, world peace, by addressing it from an enormous global, it's got to all happen right now. Believe me, I'm very impatient. I'd like it to be right now. But it doesn't work that way. The only way we can address these huge issues is by doing what we can with what we have and reaching those people that we can reach. By doing conferences like this with esteemed dignitaries with years of experience and with huge successes to their names. So let's learn from those who have, who have managed successes. Let's see what they did. Let's learn from the United Nations, drafting a document that's 75 years old, that basically is still relevant today. So let's do our research, see who has done it correctly, who has achieved the results we want. And then let's do our pieces, our small pieces, because ultimately this whole big, enormous world of ours, it's you and me. It's all of us, but one person at a time, one step at a time, and we can get there.
So incredible. Absolutely true. Follow in the steps of those who have succeeded before us. This one for Minister Letiranta. How can peace be sustainable in the whole world when human rights education is not sustainable in many countries in the world?
Sorry, found on the unmute. How the human rights education, when it is not possible everywhere in the world, I think that has to come from, as Dr. Shuttleworth just said, that from each individual, each person. So for the people, you can't impose it from outside. We can provide advice, we can provide models, we can provide best practices, but I think it has to come from the people living in each and every country. So from there, and somehow the pressure from the grassroots level growing upwards. I know it's not easy everywhere, but somehow slowly, and I do believe that through the children, when we are already teaching the small children, not only the ones that are at school, but if we can start at the earliest age. So from there, it has to grow, and through these young people, it will go and grow up to the adults. Unfortunately, it will take time, but I see the education is the way, and the others, we can provide the models and good practices, but it's really up to the people in each and every country, that you have to make the change yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wolf, this one's for you. What will be the most common element to protect and promote peace in the world?
What will be the most common element to protect and promote peace in the world?
To protect and promote peace in the world.
The most common element. I'm not sure what you mean by common element. Did the question say anything else?
That's what it says. What will be the most common element to protect and promote peace in the world? Perhaps they mean, perhaps meaning what would be like the common denominator, maybe, or the thing that would be most.
Okay. I think, this is my personal opinion here, I think gender equality and recognizing the differences that cultures have and approaching conversations that from different countries with a resolution to get to yes. I think just fully embracing the differences that we have, religious differences, tolerance. I think approaching these from a peaceful perspective and keeping channels of communication open will make the world a better place. Kind of reminds me, I think it was Mary who was saying, keeping channels of communications open. And there's an expression over at the UN that says, as long as nations are speaking, they're not fighting. And I think as long as we can all come to the table, break bread, have tea, talk about our differences with tolerance and acceptance, that we can seek solutions to these global problems.
Beautiful, thank you. And this for Ambassador Hamad. What is the role of the African Union in making sure peace prevails in the Biafra versus Nigeria and Western Togoland versus Ghana breaking away's calls? What has been done so far, and are the calls in the right direction?
Thank you so much, and let me also thank the participants for this question. The African Union, as the continental organization, focuses, of course, on building Africa that is peaceful, prosperous, and united. This, of course, includes Biafra and other areas that were mentioned in this question. We are working very closely as an African Union Commission, as a Secretariat of the African Union, with the government and the people of concerns in these areas and these parts of Africa to bring peace, and also to ensure that justice and human rights are protected and served. These are done through different kind of programs that are based on norms and standards that are adopted by the African Union. We have the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. We have also the African Union Transitional Justice Policy, and many other instruments that are currently in place to ensure that peace is introduced in these areas, and also the rights of the people have been restored to those who have been victimized as a result of these conflicts. So there are so many efforts, negotiations are going on, support of technical supports to government and also to other armed groups are also going on. A number of initiatives that are in place, and all of these initiatives are led by the leadership of the African Union and the African Union Commission to ensure that peace is brought into these people, and these people are enjoying peace, and lasting peace, in fact, that will also lead to the development and to ensure the well-being and the welfare of these people in these areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we have a few more questions. We have some time for a few more questions here. This one to Dr. Shuttleworth. You've spoken to this somewhat, but this is more specific. How can we get peace in our countries where the government is corrupted? How can people change society with human rights for peace?
That's a very good question. It starts with you. it starts with me. Who is the government ultimately? The government is ultimately us. So it starts with us setting an example. It starts with us leading by example. It starts with us doing what we can to reach out and communicate. And believe me, I do know that there are some countries, some situations where even mentioning the words human rights are, let's just say, not well received. But there are other words. There are other ways. We can call human rights peace. We can call human rights non-discrimination. You know, there are ways to communicate the same concepts, but ultimately it's about communicating, starting with yourself, reaching out to your family and friends, and just start. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. We can't sit around and magically expect human rights to happen. So I hope that addresses it, because I don't know where this person is writing from, but I've traveled to many countries and met many people. And I do know that there are situations where even speaking is really, I mean, that could be your life. And so I really do understand that. I assume that that's where this communication is coming from. But, you know, we have to be creative. I'm a teacher. So let's just take this as an example. I'm a teacher, so I like talking about teaching. We have a huge concept and we want a whole class or a whole group to get that concept. We have to start by talking in terms that those people can have, that those people can understand. If we want to teach the concept of sharing, let's take a pizza, let's take a cake, anything, a bread, and talk about sharing, cutting it in pieces, in segments, and giving each a piece to give the concept. There is a way that you can communicate those concepts in different words. In fact, to create the biggest impact, I'm sure if you think back to your own teachers, the ones who really made the impact, who really got that message across, were creative in the way that they taught whatever the lesson was. So use your own words, realize what you do have, and focus on what you can say and how you can say it. And let's make a positive change.
Beautiful, thank you. And for Ambassador Hamad again, what is the one thing everyone could do to create a peaceful world in the 21st century?
The one thing that every one of us can do as of today on is to pledge for a peaceful world. Let's make that commitment. If we can commit to promoting peace, if we can commit to be part of this movement, to achieving peace, to bringing peace, to building a peaceful world, then that is one thing that can bring us all together to shape peace together. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, a couple more here before we wrap up. Mr. Husainov, this person also wants to start human rights in Canada. You've already answered that they go to the website, but this specifically says, what are some tips and successful actions to starting a human rights group?
Thank you, and very good question. Well, first thing that anybody who wants to start a group needs to understand, especially a Youth for Human Rights group, that youth have all their passion and all their desire to create change. They might sometimes not have knowledge or wisdom to actually implement their plan, but they have to not give up on trying and putting this dream or their desire into reality. So this is the first thing I recommend, because especially when you talk about human rights or human rights education, it is very often very challenging to even start talking about this, because I come from Russia. So, you know, when you try to approach the subject, you might just immediately receive, you know, no, or, you know, a reject. So if you have that, you know, attitude that, you know, no matter what, just keep your passion on and ask for solutions or advice from people who have done it, you can make it go right. So that is the first thing that you have to realize. And then all of the technical aspects and experience will come into place. And of course, I mean, with having experience in establishing hundreds of chapters across the planet, we can assist you. We can, you know, provide you tools and everything you need so you can start and go on. And obviously, Canada is so diverse country. I'm sure it's very, very necessary for, you know, for the communities to unite and have this human rights concept fully in place.
Excellent. This is also for you, Mr. Husainov. How does one find out about future activities and events on peace and human rights from Youth for Human Rights?
Well, the best way is to subscribe to our newsletter on our homepage. You can absolutely just put your email address and name. It takes less than a minute to do. So you will receive our constant updates, or otherwise visit our social media, such as Facebook channels and other social media, Twitter, Instagram, so that anybody can, you know, get their updates.
Beautiful. And for anybody, in case you can't see this, humanrights.org. Was it humanrights.org?
Humanrights.com.
Sorry, humanrights.com. Forgive me. Humanrights.com would be the link. Okay, very good. Two more questions here. This one for Joy. We all say that we believe and support peace, but what is the first step that we individuals can practice peace and spread around us?
I think we somehow make this wrong perception of peace as a destination. I think we need to somehow think of peace as a process or a step to enlightenment, where most people will get there faster than you, or most people will understand what enlightenment is. But it's not that I will wake up today and say I'm enlightened or I have peace. It's a process. And we have to be inclusive in what we do in order to achieve peace. We cannot achieve peace while others don't even understand what peace is. So we have to bring those people to the table, and we have to have an open discussion and be honest on what it means to have peace. So I would say that think of peace in terms of your day-to-day actions. If you go to a grocery store, you go to a gas station, or you go to a restaurant, the person who is serving you, make eye contact with that person, address them by their name, because when you address someone by their name, you are saying to them, I respect you and I see you. So those actions might seem small, but what you are instilling, what you are saying to that person is, I'm showing you kindness. I'm showing you that I am human like how you are. So it's easy for that person to pass that message to another person. So it starts small. When we say small, start with your neighbors, with your friends, because if we think of the world and it's massive, it seems like it's a subject or something that is unattainable because it just seems out of this world. But if you start small with the people that are around you, your community, your own community, start from there.
That's exactly right. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, the final question for Dr. Shuttleworth. Would this pandemic add a new definition in international human rights?
Wow.
This pandemic is certainly adding a new definition for many and all of us, in fact. Is it going to add one of the human rights? No, I don't believe so. But by all means, let's discuss it. I think that the 30 human rights are so universal, and when we're discussing the broad concept, I think that they address all the issues that we hold dear. I think, I don't think that this pandemic will need to add an additional verbiage. I think what this pandemic is truly doing is taking our attention off of sometimes things that we didn't really need to spend that much time on, and really focusing on us as people, as vulnerable people, as imperfect, vulnerable people, focusing our attention on the importance of each other. You know, before this pandemic, we could go to the store and not be concerned about the person, the stranger next to us. Now we need to be concerned about it, and they need to be concerned about us. We need to know that we are doing the best we can to stay home if we are not feeling well. We need to do the best we can to help somebody who is not feeling well. I think that this pandemic is ultimately going to teach us a lesson of caring, of really valuing the importance of us as in this together, as basically a human family. In the same way, starting to care about each other, like I would care about my children, my grandchildren. So I think that is the biggest lesson that we're going to get out of this. And if we are truly wanting a peaceful world, increasing caring, that's a good thing.
Beautiful. Well, I would just love to keep going with these questions. This is so exciting. I'm so sorry we've already gone a little bit over time, and we just must wrap up here. So thank you so much to everybody. We're going to end off on the questions and answers session for right now. I've just been amazed and thrilled, and I know that you have as well. So exciting. We really want to hear your feedback from the event. So right after the event ends, please go to the address that you see on the screen, and please fill out our short feedback survey. Please also make sure to fill out your name and email address correctly, and so that we can issue and send you your certificates of participation. And finally, please feel free to share the recording of this conference on all of your social media platforms so that others can learn about it as well. Now more than ever, the world needs to hear it. Once again, thank you so much to our esteemed speakers. We are so proud to have hosted you today so that together we can amplify your extraordinary voices. Thank you also to all of the enthusiastic participants from all over the world. Through your valuable contributions and continued efforts, we are truly forging the way for shaping peace together. This wraps up the United for Human Rights Day of Peace Celebration 2020. Learn, inspire, act. From all of us at United for Human Rights, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.